If you'd like your cab corner to go from this to looking like this, here's one easy way of doing it without removing the box. I'm removing the paint so that I can see where the factory spot welds are. I'll need to drill those out in order to remove this old cab corner. Notice I'm cutting down the edge of the body line because that's the most solid point to weld. Otherwise, if I were to do it on the flat part of the panel, there's a good chance of it warping. I'm using a metal sawzall blade so I can get between the box and the cab corner to remove this old piece of steel. I'm cutting to the next junction right behind the cab. You'll see there's a flange that runs from the window all the way down to the bottom. That's where we're going to be joining in the new cab corner. This arrow represents where we're going to be cutting on the back side with the sawzall blade. It is a little bit of effort to get it in there, but once it starts going, it cuts well. I'm going to use a drill to drill out the old spot welds from the factory. We'll need to save the steel in behind this old cab corner in order to attach the new cab corner. A little bit of pulling and prying, it should pop right off. Once you get the old cab corner off, you'll be able to see what you're working with in behind what's existing. In my case, I have this ugly foam. I'm going to pull that foam out, remove all this panel bond, which is flammable, so you want to get as much off as possible. We don't want any fires when we're welding in the new piece, so there is a fire extinguisher that's nearby. I want to remind the beginners out there that in the end, whatever the outcome is, if you didn't get the body lines on or whatever the case, it'll always look better than what the rust or spray foam looked like in the beginning. So no stress, just do the best you can do. I'm using the old part of the cab corner to template my new piece. The new piece again is being cut along that body line so that we can minimize the warping. There's a few spots that you're going to have to pre-drill, or if you have a spot welder, I mean, that would work as well, but in my scenario I do not. I just have a MIG welder. I'm using Dominion Sure Seal to replace where the panel bond was. This is not to bond the panel to the vehicle because I'm going to be using a welding technique, but this is more to stop rattles and seal the back flange. The back flange is where I'm going to be tucking in this new cab corner. So I'm tucking it in behind the existing flange, and the bottom side will have new spot welds. Once you get a couple tacks on from your welder, you'll then be able to shut the door and see how everything lines up. If at that point it doesn't line up the way you want it to, you can then just cut the spot weld and re-evaluate how you want it to fit. In this case, it looks good. I'm going to continue with my spot weld. Recheck once again. If everything lines up the way you want it to, then you can continue just welding in where you've drilled out those holes. I'm using a MIG welder from Princess Auto that has a CO2 argon hookup, but you could use a flux core based wire and that would give you the same outcome. I'm cleaning up this seam where the weld is going to be so that we don't have too much contamination while we're welding it. I'm going to be using a method called stitch welding. This just dissipates some of the heat from the exact area that you're welding on. Not to say that it's not hot, but it stops from excessive warpage. Another thing that stops warping is to keep your seam as close as possible while still maintaining some sort of air gap in between. If it's too big, then it's going to warp. If it's too small, it could also warp. So you want to have about a paper width in between where you're going to weld. I always try to jump from side to side when I'm welding a seam. The seam on this one is very small, so there will be some concentrated heat, but since we're welding on an edge and not a flat panel, there should be minimal warping. The tricky part is now trying to get the welder in between the box and the back side of the cab corner, but it is doable. As you can see in this video here, I managed to get from the flange all the way to the front, and then I'm using this mini belt sander to smooth out the welds. It takes a little bit of patience, but in the end it will smooth out. And on the front you can use a flap disc or a grinding disc, whatever you prefer. I find the flap disc is a lot easier because it doesn't take so much metal off as you're grinding. Being that it is on an edge, you have to take a little bit more finesse to try and make this edge smooth. Once you're done smoothing down all your edges and your spot welds, you'll be ready to then prime, fill, and paint. You should have a nice smooth weld that you'll need minimal putty, if any at all. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.